Go.
What's up, comrades and friends? It's Red Star Videos coming at you with a dope-ass live stream. And today we are joined by Eugene from the Radio Silence podcast.
Hey, yo. Hello, everyone.
Hey-o.
Nice to be here.
What's up?
Pretty cool. And, of course, we have Dan joining us from the Imperialist Empire.
Yeah, 4th of July was fun. By that I mean it was really boring.
Yeah.
But at least I got good food, so that's what matters.
Yeah.
And also joining us live from where? Beirut?
I'm in Lebanon and specifically in Juni, but like right next to Beirut, so like on the border of Beirut and Juni. But like
I could probably find it on here.
let me see.
Oh shit! You don't want to be near this red
Juni.
area.
Juni is like north of Beirut.
Yeah, Juni is like north of Beirut. Like they're barely separated. It's probably like one road and that's it. It's like bleeds into each other.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Juni.
Juni.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
Juni.
closer to the sea.
Yeah, it's a mostly Maronite place, or at least historically was. Now Lebanon's more mixed,
Yeah.
but yeah, this was a
You don't
Maronite
wanna-
place. Very beautiful coast, very beautiful bay, and like a lot of things in Lebanon are improving. We've got some new buildings here. Sectarianism has thankfully been down lately, even especially with the war. We just got a president, Michel Aoun. But like, yeah, Lebanon functioned for a while without a president. I mean, we have a prime minister, but that's our country for you.
But it's supposed
Presidents
to
are overrated. Just like in general, you just don't need them.
be. Yeah, but in
Capitalism
Lebanon,
is overrated.
It's really important. It's really important that there's the Speaker of the House, the President, and the Prime Minister, who are respectively Sunni, Shia, and
The president
Christian,
is Maronite, not just Christian. Maronite. I forgot which one was the PM, but I think the PM was Sunni and the Speaker is Shia.
right?
Yeah, let me check that up. Sunni or Shia, because like I know it's sometimes confusing. The Speaker is Shia. The PM is a Sunni. I'm Armenian Orthodox, so I can't be either of those three. Not that
Oh my God.
Not that I'd want to have
okay.
a political career here. Like I'd get assassinated or IDF'd or something like that, or Allahu Akbar
Yeah,
and
really.
like that.
Yeah. Okay, so now we got everyone introduced. Purpose for making this live stream is kind of twofold because Eugene has this podcast called Radio Silence where he talks about. I guess the idea behind that is that it's our kind of mainstream Anglo media and narrative and whatnot is kind of silent on Belarus. You don't really hear too much about that.
Yeah, sort of.
on the
It's
internet
more
and
like
stuff that.
you never know that Belarus actually exists. This is like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
big question. Many leftists like know about Belarus because Soviet Union and they know history of Soviet Union.
Yeah.
But most of the people have no idea what it is. And actually, can we
Exact
swear
same thing
on the
about
stream?
Armenia.
Yeah,
Exact
Armenia
same
at the
thing
same
with
time.
Armenia. Yeah.
I forgot to ask before we started. Can I swear on the stream?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just
Thanks.
avoid slurs. Not
Great.
too many slurs, but yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll keep it, gender neutral but offensive. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
Offensive to the right people.
Yes, the people in general. Yeah.
Yeah, we
But,
had
like,
a big podcast about that a while ago.
okay.
Right.
So like about our podcast, mostly like Belarus is the radio silent zone, and it's sort of situated between two giant geopolitical powers, the
Yeah.
West and Russia. And this was like the main idea behind it. Like we are sitting there in the swamplands of the frontier of Europe, and we kind of see, geopolitical info war is happening somewhere above our heads, and we're just sitting in this, swamp of a land, and like stuff is happening, and we can give perspective on both sides. This was like basically how we started.
Yeah.
But it's mostly sort of blabbering about stuff, occasionally doing some like cool stuff. We occasionally talk about something interesting, but most of the time it's just shit posting. So
Sounds like you have a maid. I saw
Yeah.
South Park parody of Belarus. Something about the farmers being
the farmers in
killed or
Belarus.
something. Like Jesus in it and all that crap.
No, we didn't have like farmers being killed, but it's like a very interesting country. But it's
Do the
like a
Kulaks
very
deserve it though.
Did the kulaks desert it? I think it's a very controversial question.
You don't have to answer it. I'm just
We don't have-
shitposting
Yeah, you
because
don't
in
have
that
to
South
answer
Park
that.
episode they got kulaked and fucked.
Yeah, they were kulaks, sort of.
Yeah.
Don't even ask that question in Ukraine.
Yeah,
No, like
don't ask the question to Ukrainians. Like, I know a Ukrainian dude who said, yes, kulaks deserved it. And they don't, like one guy is, like, really hard on the left. He's, like, a good... Maybe you heard of him, Maoist Hojin?
Yeah. We talked to him about
He's
that.
a great friend of mine. Yeah, he's an amazing dude.
Yeah,
He told, like, amazing stories about this time because his family was there. when it
he
all
told us
happened.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. Like, if it is somewhere online, you should, like, people who are listening to this, you should, like, look it up because it's like, I'm not an expert on it. He is, so, like, shout out to him. Check out his discussion about it.
Yeah. So, okay, well that covers.
yeah.
Belarus. Much about into Belarus though, but just quickly, would you say the country is more Russia aligned or EU aligned?
It's more Russia aligned because economics. We are like politically, we try to stay neutral, and like kudos to our president for this. Like our politics, we try to remain neutral. For example, we didn't accept Crimea annexation, and we didn't accept the things they did in Georgia. But at the same time, a lot of economic stuff and media, Russian media is more respected by Belarusians than Belarusian media and stuff like this. So we are ideologically and economically in hands of Russia, but we try to stay neutral.
Right.
So trying to get into Syria now, would you say then that Belarusian media or public or whatever is more aligned with Russian interests in defending the Syrian government?
I can say that if we talk about Belarusian state media, our state media has been known to be like a propaganda machine for quite some time, but then it became very unpopular, also for those reasons, and now they try to cover everything very factual. I can't say they have a side, you know? They just report when something happens, something big happens. We're definitely anti-ISIS and anti... all those things, but I can't say we're like for someone in this one.
Well, just a matter. I think everyone has a side. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not as obvious, but
I think
there's not only such thing as neutral media.
I think it's low.
Like, it's really neutral in media. Yeah, it's really neutral in media, and I really enjoy this.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, the other reason why I wanted to do this is because the Syrian conflict in general has been really divisive on the left ever since it started, really. Like, at first we had leftists who still today, like at Jacobin, are calling for the downfall of the Syrian government because there's someone in the FSA they apparently want to win. I don't know who. I have never heard them say who it is. Is this glorious group that's going to make Syria better somehow?
Make Syria great again.
Great again. Yeah, I was going to say that.
No, you know what I mean? Like, I just find it the height of irresponsibility to just say this guy's bad, therefore you got to take him out. Like, no, that's irresponsible. When it's a matter of a civil war or war of intervention, you have to deal with the consequences of that. You have to say who is going to take the place of this government, because otherwise, as we've seen in Afghanistan, in Libya, in Iraq, you just say that government's bad, we want it gone. Well, look what the consequences are.
Exactly. Like, and, you know, I am not a Jewish person. Like, I don't really care about North Korea, but like everyone has been using the recent events regarding North Korea as an excuse for like pro-regime change. And I'm like, you've seen how unstable South Korea is. The only reason why South Korea is going on is because they have a shit ton of money because USA gives it to them. Like, you really think it'll be an improvement? Like, you're probably just going to make it worse, and they'll probably create the North Korean version of ISIS running around.
I mean, especially in the Middle East, where it's even more unstable.
Yeah, like, I'm in a country that has pretty much been the product of a lot of imperialism and colonialism over time, and it's not pretty.
Yeah, and I think this, notion that we should change the government of Syria because they are bad, in many ways it is sort of a neocon logic.
Yeah,
it's like very based on morality, and I can't understand where they're coming from. but I still think about like, yeah, what will happen after that? Like,
Yeah.
with that, yeah, I think it is correct, yeah, maybe, but I don't think this is the right thing to do in terms of like we have a huge social, like huge conflict. We have a thing like a social, economic, and a humanitarian catastrophe on our hands. And like you can see at the map that you've seen right now that it is really crazy what is happening. So like I have many questions to who will rule this place.
Exactly.
Especially like I'm not really sure whether it is just rumors or not, but when the protests have just started and there have been like first clashes with the army, Assad released a bunch of Islamic terrorists who he kept in a prison so that they would join the ranks, so that the group will radicalize and West would be like more hesitant to support them. I'm not really sure whether it's correct. Like I'm really
who knows?
really not sure, but this is actually like really the point. When people talk about the conflict in the West, they most of the time say that Assad is terrible, but there are no good guys in the region whom we can support.
Yeah.
And this is when we point out, what about the Kurds? Like Kurds.
Yeah.
Because this is actually like the only, for real, this is like the only legit piece of land that is like being controlled by people who actually spread democracy, and they sort of try to work with sort of democratic, non-Kurdish Syrian opposition forces. And they sort of try to do something good, and I see them as like the only group that I am happy to see winning.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and the thing with me in this is that, like, just to tell everyone what I am bluntly, that like I like it when both Assad and the Kurds are winning. Yeah, which I think is Eb's position as well. And
I mean, I've been looking into it. Certainly, there have been fights and battles in between SDF and SAA, but there also have been seems plenty of attempts at negotiation, and at least the stated intention of SDF or YPG controlling it or whatever is that they want a federation within Syria. And there have been negotiations towards that.
And it's already being made because like the YPGs are like occupying those villages in Syria, as well as basically making like a network, of this sort of what I think is like a precursor to this federation they're talking about.
right.
Maybe like I really hesitant to jump on the like Assad train just because he said, "Oh yeah, we are friends with Kurds. Let's do this." Like for all these years, he didn't, before the war, he wasn't like all into like, yeah, let's help the Kurds,
Yeah.
Oh,
No, like,
what
I definitely
Turkey
don't
is
trust
doing
him
is
to do
not
that.
good. I don't trust him at all, and I don't
Yeah,
really
me either.
think that, I think that Kurds are trying to take their land, their native land. So sort of the north of Syria was always Kurdish, and the Rojava is there now. And I think that I don't even see a good reason to support Assad. I'm trying to think about it. I was thinking why I should support him, and I couldn't find any justification. Like, why do you support him? Like, this is the question.
Here's the thing with me. Like a while back, I used to be, like most Lebanese people, like they used to like really hate Assad, but I think it's probably having to do with lesser evilism, in that the FSA is a complete clusterfuck. ISIS is terrible. The Kurds are, like you said, really just after their native lands and have no interest in the Arab-controlled regions. I mean, they're going to be outnumbered. They have no real historical claim to there, but like, so what do we do with the actual Arab lands? And at that point, I feel like only the Baathists are able to actually exert any sort of control. Now, I do think that there is a chance that Assad himself might have to go, at least as head of the Baath party, because he's the face for a lot of turmoil and he'll be replaced by another Baathist. But like, I just want that Baathist faction to win solely because like there's, like who wants the FSA to win? It's abundantly clear that they're either going to try to install something like Saudi Arabia but poorer, or like just like some puppet fake democratic state that will be like a pawn of the United States. Now, I am a realistic enough to know that Assad is closely linked with Russia, but the thing with Russia is that like they are way too weak to be the imperialist superpower they want to be. So like I don't think that Russia will actually gain much by having control over Syria. Like, Putin is not as strong or as smart as we or even he thinks he is. So, like, I don't see there's too much danger in that.
I personally disagree with you on this point because the reason why Putin is there, and I should underline that every single person, like every single media piece is blabbering about Putin actually like shooting down Syrians and bombing the like ISIS and stuff, but he's there to support the government to destroy the opposition.
Yeah, I don't doubt that for a second.
Yeah, and it's not nobody likes to mention that Russia is there actually lying and supporting Assad. But at the same time, like as I talked with a couple of leftists, and they said, like, listen to me, intervention is not imperialism, but there is some sort of other thing that is happening. I completely agree. When country just like sends the people to fight in other people's war, it's interventionalism, but it's not imperialism. What makes this war Russian imperialism precisely is the fact that there was a project for a huge pipeline that should go through all Arab nations, through Iraq, and then end up in Syria, so that oil can pass through the Mediterranean to Europe without Russia. And their main goal in the region, I believe personally, it's like I assume, allegedly, other people assuming this as well, is to stop this pipeline from being built. Because if they will have a puppet master in Syria, the one who like gets a lot of weapons, the one that helps them, because all this friendship with Iran didn't like result in anything that they tried to establish for a very long time. It didn't work out, and they now try to do something with Assad. And I like this comes to like the discussion between socialism and barbarism and Jason.
Oh yeah,
I believe that there was a huge. I enjoy Jason, like Jason's content. He's a great guy, but I believe that he got one thing wrong. Assad is not just a guy who's fighting imperialism. He's also a puppet of imperialists. Like literally, his whole purpose in the eyes of Russia is to block the oil, and to get the privatized and get the maybe again allegedly get the oil from Syria and make it, privatize it so that Gazprom and other companies from Russia will come and just get it.
Yeah.
Get the oil that they have.
I don't disagree on that point, but I do think there's also a few more points to it. First is probably the fact that they have a Navy base there, and Russian geography is like, they have too many frozen ports. They have something in Syria that's warm water consistently. So there's the whole idea of like having a military base there, and like that is definitely imperialistic, but like realistically speaking, I mean, like, what imperialist power is not going to do that? And also, I believe two more reasons. One is, egotistical, like he doesn't want to lose Syria. Like he doesn't want it to be another Afghanistan, like in the Soviet Union in the 80s and all. And a second is probably personal for Russia, because Russia has a bunch of, messed up Islamists in the Caucasus region, and they feel that if they can take down the so-called caliph, then it might, make all those Islamist shitheads in the South Caucasus stop. Because, ISIS is clearly not ordained by God. I don't think Muhammad would exactly be a fan of what ISIS is doing. And, if they lose,
I mean,
kind of. Yeah, please go on.
It's a good point, because that's another side to it, is that Russia hasn't been intervening the entire time. I don't believe they were intervening even as long as the U.S. The other side is that you could say that they came in after Daesh formed, and they were invited by the Syrian government into the country in order to help them fight the terrorists.
Sort of and sort of not, because there's like a huge thing that exists in Russia. Like, there are many Islamists in Caucasus region, and a lot of them are actually fighting them on ISIS ranks. And it is pretty interesting. I'm following what's his face, Richard Spencer on Twitter, and he recently posted a picture of him with his guy, two of the whitest people I've ever seen in my whole damn life, and I live in Belarus. They're even whiter than Belarusians. They are standing there.
Did he get bashed while he was taking that picture? Because I really hope that was the case.
No. It was a picture of them on some like event, and they are pointing fingers to the sky, like the not middle fingers. I forgot this finger in English. It's the pointing finger.
Index finger.
Index finger. Yeah, they're pointing to the sky, and there is a caption, literally ISIS, because many ISIS troops were found, pictures of them pointing one finger, the index finger, to the sky. It is a sign that has been widely used by Caucasian, Caucasus terrorist groups. In Russian, it sounds jest, something like this. It is a huge meme, actually, in Russia. It means basically there is one God. And so this is like being a sign that it's actually quite regional. I've never seen any like terrorist, any Islamist use this sign, but the ones that are in Russia. So there are many people, extremists in Russia, who actually are there now, fighting on the side of ISIS. Russian government did intervene in like very precise moments, but in many ways you should also consider the fact that they also use this conflict as a way to influence the inner politics.
Right.
Like, did you know that they had a concert of classical music in Aleppo? No, this Palmyra.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this was just fucked up. Like, when I first saw this, I was like, really? Like, you are that crazy in your head, Because you shouldn't really think about Russia as like this evil power. Like, I say that they're imperialists because they are, but their interests are not only in controlling resources, but to be posh, rich people, because Russia is an oligarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like one thing you should understand. Putin is not the only guy who's in charge. There are a bunch of friends that he has, personal friends from childhood, that rule like big companies and that are ministers. And those were the guys who did this war and who are doing this war. And this, event, them having this classical music event, for me was like, oh, look at us, we're so rich and powerful thing. So,
right.
And it's really a propaganda thing for the inner Russian stuff, because it has been used like, oh, look at us, we are fighting international terrorism, we're so great. And approval ratings of Putin because of this are going sky high.
Right. Yeah, that's always the thing that's got me about the West is like, they keep saying that Putin exaggerates his own approval ratings, but it really is that high, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. Like the research concludes, like independent researchers conclude that it's just crazy, amazing, huge. You can't find anyone. Yeah, huge. The huge numbers, the best numbers, and they are literally are the best numbers. Wow. There is no person in Russia who can challenge Putin right now today.
I mean, that sounds about right because, like, I mean, like in all the elections that Russia has had, Putin has like won like 80% of the votes.
Yeah, because it's an issue of who can actually run for president. When like a bunch of people who run for president are just the people who are, the sort of quote unquote opposition party, like Communist Party of Russia, for example. Like, oh yeah, this guy is not running for president. Oh, I guess he lost. Oh, good luck next time. A person who like leaves off as being, this sort of opposition leader.
Yeah,
sort of communist.
Well, that's kind of how it works in the United States too, just without the communists.
Yeah.
Right. Where does he mostly get his votes from? The big cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg, from Siberia, the Far East, where?
It's really hard to tell because Moscow and like urban cities, urban developed regions are more liberal, like traditionally. They are traditionally more liberal for the reasons that those are like the guys who get better education. They get they live in a sort of environment where they have access to other sources of information. And so St. Petersburg is very, very liberal. Moscow is also quite, but also those cities are very diverse, and there are many, many other groups of other communities that can have different attitudes to the current government. And I can't really say that it is like, if we compare democratic processes in America and in Russia, it's like a huge logical mistake. Russia doesn't have democracy and doesn't have a democratic process.
Right.
Like, I don't think it's like, yeah.
compared to Belarus, is that an improvement, or is like Belarus even worse in that regard?
Isn't it?
In this regard, like before we start speaking about Belarus in this regard, I'd like to point out two things. Just like, an important reminder, KGB is still called KGB in Belarus.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
This is the first important thing. Just mentioning this, we have KGB. No. And the second thing is that we ban anarchists all the time. And the third thing, I just added it to my list, saying bad stuff about president, offending him publicly, is outlawed.
See, in Armenia, we have like something similar, except not as authoritarian, but their oligarchs are super boring. And Lebanon, it's like, I don't know, we're like crypto ANCAP right now. With like the whole, like, is there even any regulation here? It's like, but like, I don't know, maybe Lebanon is an excuse for anarcho-capitalism working here because the country seems to function without ever recognizing there are authorities. I mean, like, we see soldiers on the streets all the time with like, their AKs and their M16s.
Yeah.
But like, the regulations are like pretty lax. I mean, it's actually kind of funny. I mean, in Lebanon, we have a lot of problems I hear like Venezuela has in, regards to the whole dysfunctional bureaucrats and stuff like that, or like, power outages, not exactly the best internet, except like, while Venezuelans might have shortages in goods, we have the risk of, terrorists and stuff. So, fair trade-off. But like, the thing with Lebanon right here is that it's still a capitalist country, like unambiguously. And you don't see me like, spamming every capitalist form about, oh, what about Lebanon? Like, but that's pretty much going to be my retort every time someone tells me about Venezuela.
Exactly. And Belarus is sort of, if we trying to describe it from like its standard sort of like political compass thing, like what is it in terms of like ideology, I can not very accurately but describe it as authoritarian, democratic, socialist, reformist, so like socialist reformist government that doesn't have socialism as a task. We don't have it anywhere in Constitution, and we are like considered to be the social republic. So we're like sort of for the people, and we are quite authoritarian. And we have we have huge amounts of police. We have like police, like loads of police officers. They have very like amazing benefits, and it's like a very good job to have if you don't have higher education, is to go into the police. It's like one of the best jobs you can have without higher education or like special education. And from the standpoint of how it all feels, it's still capitalist. It's still capitalist with a lot of pressure on small and medium businesses. And a lot of stuff that is like, we have a lot of things, a lot of industries still in the hands of the government, but a lot of stuff that is done by a small group of people, like sort of oligarchs that are like on everyone's ear, like everybody has heard of their names. But we have economic stagnation, we have a lot of problems with economy, and we live off the credits given us from Russia. Like, Russia gives us huge amounts of money. I think $3 billion per year. So this is like the whole situation, basically.
Yeah, I see.
Like,
so if we're going to relate this all to Syria, like, I think we can just agree we all come from some really messed up capitalist countries. Yeah.
Understatement.
Yeah, but and it's actually funny. We have like a Russian, Armenian, and Belarusian here. So like, if any dumbass capitalist in the comment section is going to be like, "Oh, you guys complaining about your authoritarian capitalist governments? Well, if you guys came from a communist country," I'm like, "Fuck off."
Yeah, it's really irritating when people try to compare those things, when they claim that socialism doesn't work because like this or that. Like, look at this country or that country. I always tell them that, like, my counter argument to this like cliche argument that socialism doesn't work is that, then show me any successes of capitalism anywhere except for Western Europe and its colonies or ex-colonies.
Yeah.
Like, any success anywhere in the world. Like, yeah, you can say China. China is a very successful capitalist government country. Yes, because they have crazy authoritarian rule there in terms of like government control over businesses. That's why they succeed. But anywhere else in the world, it doesn't work.
Because like, and they're only advanced because like Mao managed to try to get the country to get on its feet.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
like a lot of the other people under Mao did some huge fuck ups. Like surprisingly, Mao did not have as much control as anybody thinks he does. But like it was under the whole communist leadership as well that China was able to get anywhere. I mean, like you look at the history of Chinese monarchism, and I'm like, this killed way more than the alleged 100 million people. So yeah, Chinese monarchism is officially the deadliest ideology in the world. Thank you, Mao, for at least temporarily making it communistic. So yeah.
I think it is really important to think critically about everything. Like people who think critically about socialism on the right, kudos to that. That's a great thing to think critically about any form of government so that we can figure out the best way to rule ourselves as a people. But at the same time, you should also think of a history of why the revolutions happened. Like, have a look at the state of Russia. Like, why did a lot of like the Jews or the Bolshevik Jews? Why there were a lot of Jewish people in among the socialists? Because I live in a place that was predominantly Jewish. 50% of I think 50% of the citizens of my capital, Minsk, where I live, were Jewish, and Jews were not allowed into Russia. Part of the Russian Empire. It slowly economically destroyed the region. People were dying like everywhere. The healthcare was terrible. Life expectancy was just crazy. It was basically medieval ages in the 19th century, in the 20th century even. And so it's no surprise that those people, the ones who rose up and actually did some amazing work. Like we haven't talked about it, but like I am a Trotskyist myself. In many ways, I have some sort of. I'm very non-sectarian. I enjoy a lot of ideology, but I like my socialism to have like power checks and democracies and rights. This is like my thing. For me, it is actually quite obvious that if I'm very critical of Soviet Union, but if we look at what they have done, like in first years of revolution, after the revolution, it was crazily amazing. Like, if you look at the history books, if you look at the education, if you look at economy, it created an amazing country that was just a medieval, like, feudal land, and became one of the most powerful countries in the world. So, like, it's really important to think about those things as, seriously, not just dismissing everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, often the argument really just kind of boils down to between like, well, communism doesn't work because this or that. That's really the question is I always ask, like, who does it work for exactly?
Yeah, sort of, yeah. How doesn't work for the businessman? Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But like, let us like return to the Syria for a second, because like I have a huge question about like it's actually a thing that I don't understand about Rojava. Like, Rojava is an amazing thing from the standpoint of the fight, and we see as the leftist a lot of stuff that is like hanging around, basically the leftist circles. But what about the economy? Like, those guys are considered to be democratic confederalists, or democratic federalists, and I have like a lot of issues. Like, I have no idea how the economy functions, whether they have private property, how it all functions. Like, can you please educate me on this spot?
I'm pretty sure they do have private property.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of, I think there's some anarchists that like to exaggerate and say, oh, it's like private property is abolished. It's like total.
Yeah.
I highly doubt that. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I think it's kind of a new thing because it's kind of, the ideology comes from Abdullah Öcalan and his, his teachings that used to be sort of more Marxist aligned. Now it's evolved to this Bookchinist, democratic confederalism. What does it really look like in practice? I'm not entirely sure. I know it's not a complete and total social revolution.
Yeah,
in favor of like workers and peasants against the bourgeoisie. I don't think that's entirely happened.
Right.
But economically, I don't know. I'm sure it's definitely pushing further to the left of maybe even what they had before. Syria itself is basically like like a left nationalist government, right? There was a lot of nationalizations.
Right. Like, here's the thing with the Middle East. Like, right here in the Middle East, it's definitely going to be more socially conservative. I mean, like, compared to most of the world, like most of the world, I'd say leans socially conservative, except for the West, because, you know, material conditions, customs, and all that. Yeah. So obviously, the Ba'athist government in Syria, it's for our standards going to be leftist in terms of social policy, you know, in terms of rights for women, secularization, ethnic, you know, pluralism, because Syria is a pretty diverse country, and in tiny Lebanon, we have so much diversity packed into it. Like, when it wasn't handled well by the capitalists, it spiraled into civil war, and essentially,
but, I mean, the Kurds still have their complaints, of course.
Yeah, and like, here's the thing: like, Syria right now is basically Lebanon's civil war on a much grander scale, although like with much deadlier repercussions. So basically, I do believe that the Ba'athist government, for the time being, has been able to do a good job holding the country together as a glue, because right wing in the Middle East means Islamist, and like you all see what happens when the right wing in the Middle East gains a lot of traction. We get ISIS.
Not good.
So like, I don't give a damn if you're like the most xenophobic pro-capitalist ever. You better be supporting us Middle Eastern leftists, because our like right wing doesn't fuck around.
Yeah, it's not.
Yes, so yeah, like, I would describe Assad personally as like a third positionist. You know, like, the economy is like. It's like some degree of welfare here and there, but like definitely capitalistic. Like, funny enough, I had to flee to Syria in 2006 when Hezbollah and Israel were fighting a war, and you know, I saw a bunch of capitalist products while I was there. I stayed in a capitalist JW Marriott hotel or something, but however, like, there were some talks like, you know, the government will pay for this and that. Like, there were public services in Syria. And again, socially, like, it's definitely going to be like conservative if like you put like the average Canadian or like West Coast snob from America in Syria. But like, compared to like what we have in like arch conservative Saudi Arabia and Qatar, it's definitely way more progressive. Yeah, and especially compared to like the far right wing of that is ISIS. So I don't see why many people would try to equate Assad's social positions with ISIS's social positions. Are the Ba'athists perfect? No, they have like a lot of blood on their hands. I mean, like, Saddam was gassing Kurds, but like, compared to the alternative of like having either like a Saudi Arabia clone or like something like Daesh, I'm like, what more do you want?
Or I know. Unending war like Afghanistan and Libya, just chaos.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's not perfect, but like, what more do you leftists want from this region? I know we trashed lesser evilism in the first world, but that's the first world. In the Middle East, in the Levant, we don't exactly have as much of a choice right now.
Yeah, and also like, I believe that what I've read and what I've understood of democratic confederalism, it sort of creates a platform for a further change to the left. It's sort of like, you know, like a revolution in Egypt. Like the one that happened in Egypt, I, as a leftist, completely support this one for a very particular reason, because this is the kind of revolution that actually Russia needs especially. This is the revolution that starts up the civic society, the society of ideas, the society of antagonistic attacks from the right and left, you know, not just the authority and the opposition. This is like sort of people figuring out that they are ruling themselves and not some government rules them. And it is a thing that many third world countries need. It sort of aligns maybe with what Mao wrote about primary and secondary contradiction, because it's quite similar. Because this is the point when people realize that they are a civic society, not just, you know, people who live there under this particular guy.
Right.
Like, and the democratic confederalism platform is the one that could provide this sort of civic society, I believe.
Right. I will just say though, because like, as someone like who lives in who's right now, literally right now in the country where the Syrian civil war is right next door, I do kind of wish the Arab Spring never happened. I think it's a massive geopolitical disaster. It's brought more harm than good.
Yeah.
But I think it's maybe also due to the fact that, the West has an interest in seeing a lot of these secular dictatorships of the Middle East fall because they tend to be more explicitly anti-Western than the puppet state fuck buddy that is the Gulf. And so, rather, like I said, right wingers in the Middle East are going to be anti-communist and support capitalistic policies. But if they aren't directly controlled by the West, they're going to be Islamists just going to trying to fuck everyone up. So yeah,
I get it.
Yeah, that's why I wish the Arab Spring never happened. It gave a platform for the Middle Eastern right to rise, and that's why we're in the middle of the Arab winter. And because of the whole crisis, we have a massive, refugee outflow, which has been the perfect opportunity for the right in the Western countries to scaremonger and fearmonger and say, this is why I need to elect us because of those damn fleeing Middle Eastern people, even though those people fleeing the Middle East are fleeing because of, the West supported this sort of revolution in first. Yeah. I do think that a few years ago, 5 years ago, I would have been all on board with this. But now that I've become a socialist and communist and I've seen what has happened and how the left has how the West has a big interest in regime change. How could I support this? I do support internal reformations, but this entire thing was doomed from the start.
Yeah.
I completely agree. It's really hard to do something good if you're part of the thing that is manipulated by the imperialists.
Yeah.
Because the interests do not lie in the same spot. I really believe that some countries went out okay. For example, I'm not really sure, but what I've heard about Tunisia.
Yeah.
Tunisia is great.
Ironically, where it all started.
Yeah, but those are guys.
Yeah, but even then, we still have Tunisian refugees, and a lot of Tunisians have joined ISIS. So I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. This is really have been just stirring a pot that should have not been stirred that hard, and now it's overflowing, sort of. And it's really a question of how do we figure this stuff now?
Yeah.
What should we do now? Because I support Rojava, and it became a meme. Actually, I support Rojava, and I think it's pretty fun because nobody knows what the hell is happening there. And all we hear is a lot of contradicting stuff, but still everyone is kind of, I kind of agree. But still, Jason, with his thing that he did with socialism and barbarism, that was actually a very interesting argument that he had. I'm not really sure whether he elaborated on it correctly and but I really think that it's a thing to keep in mind that yes, USA supports Rojava and they send weapons and money, and they do it because it is a temporary ally to them in the region, and they have stated it perfectly well in the reports and in the press conferences that they support Rojava temporarily, and we shouldn't just claim they are the puppets because they are actually doing the work. They are actually holding the power in the region. But at the same time, I'm really doubtful. I'm really hopeful, but I still have some doubt that the Rojava will survive in this as a state, even with no intervention by the West, for a very particular reason. Because first of all, this country spends 80% of its budget on war. It is driven by a military zeal at the moment, and that's why everything stays well. When the war disappears, then will be the real revolution happening, because this is the time when they will try to figure stuff out in the peaceful times. And I'm really hopeful, but a lot of those kind of revolutions fall at this particular point, when you have to figure stuff out, and when you have those ideals in mind, they often don't fit what you get.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people are saying about Iraq right now. The whole thing with Iraq is that the whole country, compared to the past few years, has been pretty unified in fighting against ISIS, and that's easy. ISIS hates everyone; they're killing everyone, so it's easy for the entirety of Iraq to unify against the Daesh. But once ISIS is gone, this really sectarian country might start fighting amongst itself again very soon. The Kurds were going through an economic boom there, but bear in mind, the Kurds in Iraq are not the leftists of Rojava. So,
Yeah,
And
they
they
actually
tried to
opposed them, and they made like a lot of claims against Rojava. And this is like weird. But again, like coming back to Maoist contradictions, like imperialism and colonies, and then capitalism and proletariat, like as a secondary contradiction.
Yeah.
I think Rojava is actually proving Mao's point, because it is actually a unified nation. Like it's more or less just Kurds who are fighting for their independence. Of course, they have sort of like leftist anti-authoritarian tendencies, but it doesn't change the fact that it's actually a national liberation war in many ways. And many people see it as a national liberation war. It is the people actually getting independence. So it like fits perfectly with what Mao, I believe, in my reading of Mao, what he was describing. Like this exact thing is happening. Yes, it may fall because there are a lot of imperialists that are like going to attack it, but at the time, at this particular moment, those are the guys who are getting the independence from the West.
But I guess Jason's point was that by the fact that the U.S. imperialists are arming Rojava, it's like we can't just take their word for it that the point is to defeat defeat Daesh with that, because I mean they're partially responsible for creating Daesh. They're the ones who sent weapons to anyone in the opposition that would fight the government, and you know that's how it started. So there's no reason to believe they have that's the plan. Obviously, the plan is to keep Syria separated so that they can have an easier divide and conquer strategy with that.
Yeah, I get it. But at the same time, I don't think. Yeah, sorry, go on.
The way I see it,
sorry for interrupting.
It's a very multi-faction civil war. So the way I see it is, you look at which faction is fighting with which, and say, who do I want to win with SDF versus Daesh and any Islamist militants? Yes, unconditional victory for SDF. For the Syrian government versus the Islamists, unconditional victory for the Syrian government.
Okay, agreed.
For the FSA versus the government, I want Syrian government to win that as well, because there's no one in there that's going to be better than the Syrian government.
Exactly. Now, that's the thing.
The problem is when the SDF starts fighting the Syrian government, and if the reports are believed to be true that the SDF is taking area outside of what's traditionally known as Kurdistan and actually carving out pieces of Syria to like basically split it in half.
Yeah,
that would be a massive problem, because ethnic conflicts like what we've seen in Yugoslavia or like literally in the Middle East the past few years will start to break out again. Like, as a far leftist that supports both Assad and the Kurds in Rojava, like I've been holding. It's not really a contradictory position, but like in the future it might be if they start to fight, unless they go for federalism. Like I think Assad might go for it because like he's going to be too tired to continue fighting after like so long. So
I mean, both sides, at least on paper, want federalism, I think.
Right.
How did Assad? Why did federalism in Kurdistan? You mean?
Yeah, I mean, well, if the reports are believed to be true, there has been efforts on both sides to get together, and they actually have had negotiations.
Well, that's because there is ISIS. Like, I still don't believe it, but like perfectly, like in a perfect world, I want to believe that they can figure this thing out.
Yeah.
And I want to believe that they will be able to establish sort of democratic federalist autonomy, maybe. Yeah. Like it is possible, and I think Assad. I hope Assad will be too tired. Like, yeah.
Or be pushed out, possibly.
Yeah. Because
the thing is, when SDF is fighting against the Syrian government, you have to think, are we smarter than the CIA? Do we know more than they know? Do we have a better plan than they have?
Exactly.
This is a difficult question.
Yeah, like this does feel like something the CIA is going to backstab the SDF on. Like the strategy of American imperialism has always been to be fuck around with everyone and then eventually betray them or some shit.
Yeah, make a bunch of proxy wars until it basically boils down to at least a few sides they can get in on.
Right.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's easier to control them.
Yeah. Just get on the side of the winning team as far as you can when it gets to that point.
Yeah, find the good guys there, quote unquote, good guys.
Yeah.
But the question is also
That's what they call it in U.S. media. You know, SDF
Yeah.
is like, oh, we gotta support them to fight Assad because he's evil, and so is Putin. Putin is also really evil because they ruined our election, and etc.
Yeah, I mean,
So
Yeah.
stupid.
yeah.
It's so stupid.
It is.
Like Putin literally
Sorry,
elected Trump.
I'm just so upset because like I hear it all the time on the news. It's like it's like Russia like 24/7. It's just like none of it matters.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like you should,
Doesn't
you
matter.
should
There's way
think
more
about
important shit going on.
elections. Yeah, you should like let people do their thing. Like if they want to look into this stuff, yeah, let them look into this thing. But don't let it all become just a huge circus like the CNN does. It just became a Russia news in America today. Yeah, let's talk about how Russia is terrible. And this is why they're getting all the bad press from like literally the president of the United States.
Yeah, here's the thing. As someone that's studying international relations, I'm kind of happy geopolitics has made a comeback, but I didn't want it to be like this. Like,
How did you want it to be? Like
I don't know.
Vietnam?
I don't know. Like at least acknowledge. Like at least the Americans are acknowledging that there are countries besides them. But like, holy shit! Like they think like Clinton was and Trump were like 50-50, but then Putin went over to Wisconsin and casted one vote in for Trump, and then bam, Trump won.
Yeah, really.
No.
It's really, literally do think that.
It's
Yeah, and
mostly
like
people
if
can't
Putin
believe. They just can't believe that Hillary can lose. Hillary Clinton, the worst candidate they have ever produced, I think.
Yeah, two things on that. One, if Putin really did cast that one vote in Wisconsin that made Trump win, which I'm sure he did, it's just sarcasm, but like honestly, it's going to be karma for America trying to commit regime change for so long, so they're going to be on the receiving end of it for once.
No, he personally hacked the whole thing. He walked into the election in like a hoodie with sunglasses. And just
dude, there is an actual propaganda poster. Like there is a law in Belarus that bans empty billboards. They should always be filled. This is the way of government to put actual like social advertisements and propaganda and stuff like this. And we had a thing like in the street with a guy in gloves, in like balaclava, typing on a computer, and it was like it was promoting like cybersecurity, and the guy was like typing in with like very serious face. You can see that he's like hacking the emails at this moment, and he's like, and there were a lot of like little text, like really cringy shit, like virus www, like hanging in the air, like sort of like Sherlock SMS stuff, like in the air, handing the text. It was really cringy. It was terrible. It was exactly what I imagined Russia did. But like you mentioned, very interesting points. The point that we went already like from this thing, but I wanted to point out one interesting thing about like, do we know more than CIA? Like this kind of thing. I don't think it is a correct way to even compare, because I remember when I was really into American political satire, I saw the Colbert Show, and he had like the one like the one that he's on right now. He was hosting, and I saw him. He had a guest on, the guy who was like in charge of Bush's CIA. I forgot his name completely, and they talked about Iraq War.
Yeah,
and he tried to, sort of pull something that you should Google it, because it's actually an amazing, like the way he was trying to push out the information about, were you really sure they had weapons of mass destruction or not? And from what we understood from this, spy trying to answer a direct question, he said that they sort of believed they actually had weapons of mass destruction, and they choose to believe the information that wasn't really correct because it was just intelligence. It wasn't the facts, it was intelligence. And they chose actively to believe it.
Yeah.
And this sort of, mistake, it's sort of, this logical mistake always happens when you talk about intelligence. And
I don't think it was a mistake, though. They wanted to believe that there was some reason to invade Syria. Iraq because they wanted to do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And so the same thing can always happen when we talk about intelligence, because I think for us it is easier to figure stuff out rather than CIA, because they have much more information that contradicts itself, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
it's like easy to believe that we sitting here like in Google Hangouts can talk about Syria with more accuracy than the CIA, because they just swarmed with intelligence and they have no idea what is true.
Yeah, I just believe at this point the CIA just believes whatever lets them go killing again.
They pretty much
This is like
psychopaths. All of them.
Well, I guess my point with that though was that in a situation where the SDF is fighting the Syrian government, I mean, it's a situation where one side is armed and backed by the U.S. and the other side is the government that the U.S. is trying to topple. So I think they do have a point when they say objectively imperialism is on the side of SDF in that case.
Right.
That's what makes it difficult.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like it, and like I cannot wait for the left-wing party splitting if the SDF and Syrian Arab Army literally do declare full-scale war against each other. The only thing that I think could stop it is Putin has an interest in keeping Assad around, and he doesn't want to go into further blows with the West right now. And if Trump really is a Russian puppet, which I'm sure he is, because Putin has level 100 charisma, and he has level 100. And when he was hacking the elections, like it was like that Fallout lock screen when he gets the password. He was able to enter. He was able to enter.
Get on a third try.
Matrix. Yeah, he was able to enter some sort of matrix level inside Trump's head, and basically in that cyberspace that is Trump's mind, Putin is like dressed like Neo. Hey, don't attack Assad. And then Trump woke up the next morning saying, "I have the best idea not to attack Assad." And that's just gonna happen.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So it's another.
That's some next level like woke stuff.
Yeah, but like
Next level.
But there's the thing: Putin must have inevitably failed that charisma check, because like Trump still looks like he's going to keep bombing Assad despite his promises not to do so.
Yeah.
The time will tell, though, in the next few meetings, because Russia, United States, and China have been meeting each other, is if it's going to change. So like, if Trump, so unless
I don't think.
I know, I
don't think.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Because like I remember a good like one of my favorite rappers ever is Killer Mike, and he had the most amazing. He's a beast, yeah, and I love Run the Jewels. And he like a couple of years ago had an amazing song that is called Reagan.
Yeah.
This is the best music video, like one of the best music videos I've seen. Like if you're like, you should check it out, like 100% if you haven't seen it. And there he said a very good point to like imperialism. He said that in that song that, you think that Bush and Obama are different because they're like from different political parties? Not really, because they both went after Gaddafi. And they are both planning to go after Iran. And you're like, yeah, kinda. And then Trump is doing the same thing. It just doesn't matter, because it's not political parties that are fighting. Like everyone wants us to believe so, but really it is just neoliberal capitalism doing its neoliberal capitalism thing that it does.
Yeah, or as Wachowski would put it, it's just a business party in action.
Yeah, exactly. They just doing the same thing. Like I wasn't even surprised that Trump just went after Syrian government, like when he was saying that he won't. Like, and I'm really like,
This is
yes, exactly.
Like, here's the thing: a lot of Americans were foolish enough to think Trump would break ties with Saudi Arabia, and I'm like, no, they're all right-wing capitalists. He's gonna continue doing deals with them. He's given Qatar money, despite the fact that Saudi Arabia and Qatar like friendship over. So
yeah, because
I know he's
like,
probably pulling that level 9000 Matrix chest right there with his elite hacking skills, dressed in another coat.
Yeah. Like, I don't think that in a system that was created, like two-party system, this is especially created to hold power in a very small amount of hands and to pass it out to a small amounts of hands. Like, people shouldn't believe that like America has democracy. It doesn't have democracy in the traditional sense of the word. It doesn't. You can't even identify it as a democracy. It is a sort of, oligarchist, like federative republic, sort of,
Yeah, there's been like studies by Yale and MIT that are confirming that it's a plutocracy, that essentially any input by citizens is pretty much null. Even like local towns and their politics. Well, actually, no, it's actually on the national level is what I'm saying. The average citizens don't have barely, like, a very small percentage of effect on policy on a national level.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, like, we should all, I love, like, the leftists are the most reasonable in this regard, because we do see that it's no different, and the politics don't differ depending on the party. It differs depending on business interests.
Yeah.
Like, it is
Or that
cool to have
different
North Korea.
parties represent different sections of the ruling class.
Sort of. And but really, why does the foreign policy doesn't change at all?
I mean, like, in certain situations they do.
Yeah, in certain situations they really do. But, like, the fact that North Korea exists still is not because Kim. It's because United States of America.
Yeah.
It's because it is those guys who don't want reunification, because they need an enemy, and they need this sort of thing that is sort of their fight, and they are South Korea, not independent Korea, unified Korea, but they are South Korea. And China is all into supporting the border with North Korea. So it's basically big bullies figuring out stuff, like, for the smaller people, because they all in the hands of two giant powers, USA that has its interest and China that has its interest. Yeah. So it's like really a question of material condition, really.
Yeah.
Who wants what and who gets what? Yeah.
Yeah, it's also all the same reason why the United States still keeps Turkey and Saudi Arabia around too. Well, of course, mostly because it's even bigger benefit than North Korea would be in that sense. Yeah. So, but yeah, I agree. That's like really the only reason that North Korea is still even a thing now.
I see that you're like scrolling through some Malcolm X stuff.
Yeah,
from the lyrics
Mike song, and then
yeah. I completely support what Malcolm X did. Like, I think in terms of like what America needs to do to stop this thing from the inside is what the Black Panther was doing. Like, really, every single strategy that they adopted is still valid, and every single thing that they did, like, you should like. I'm not really sure whether like a lot of people understand this, but the reason why the any change is happening is because there is also violence next to it. Like, the reason why Martin Luther King was so successful, because there was Malcolm X and Black Panthers. The reason why India got its independence, not because Gandhi, not only because Gandhi, but also because on the north there were terror attacks by Muslim extremists and Hindu extremists on the English. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
I want to say one point though. Like, I don't disagree necessarily, but it's also the fact that it also has a lot to do with the riot. Like, during the civil rights movement, it had to do with like a lot of the riots as well. That's the only reason why we have civil rights at all, is because Congress was getting really afraid that there was going to be a massive revolt against them. Against the business interests of the United States, as well as the political interests of the United States. And also the fact that the Vietnam War was a shit show as well. And the United States knew it, but they kept it going until it was eventually stopped, because it was just causing way too much civil unrest.
Yeah, it's more about like revolutionary conditions.
Same thing from the 80s, like when with the AIDS crisis as well, was when gay people in the LGBT community started really gaining traction and more noticeability, as well as basically saying Reagan is basically committing a genocide against the entire LGBT community, which is the only reason now we have that LGBT people have some rights with and public acceptability today in the United States.
I completely agree with that, and this is like the reason why I, as like a little pussy person, sort of understand the notion of violent revolution, because I believe that revolutionary situation can be peaceful, But the point is that all this, peaceful stuff that you're doing, all of a sudden people have guns, on the other side, and they're like, we won't let you do anything anymore, and we actually will destroy you because we are literally fascists now. This is like what always happens and will happen. Like, and it is just like normal to be expecting violence from the other side just based on the direct action and stuff that you're doing, on the local level. People will start to get violent, and like, it's not really about the violence, committing violence. It's about people at the top, the porky, being afraid of actually having some sort of pushback when he will try to reclaim what is his. This is like why Black Panthers have like such a huge role in the peace movement. And I think that all the peaceful stuff that has been going on, that was going on during the Iraq, when United States wanted to go to Iraq. Where are those people now? Like, there were huge protests in Washington. People were going around like, oh, you're going in for oil, no blood for oil, yay. But what about now? Where are the people? Are there any people who actually are protesting Trump, not in regard that he's a terrible human person, which he certainly is, but where are the people who are opposing, not Trump, but actual American government going into Syria right now?
Yeah,
that's why the
here's my cynical answer for the Iraq War thing. It's when like Obama took over and like, oh, he's Obama. Look how charismatic and kind he is. There's no way he can be an asshole. And Canada, and Canada, we have the same thing with like Trudeau, and I'm like, oh, he's so handsome. Have you seen this? Like,
so young.
And he's not handsome. And like, no, he's not. He's just he has hair, Joe. That's
okay.
He's going too far.
He is beautiful.
Whatever.
I waved at him once when I saw him at a few years ago.
Did your wave by any chance
hit
him in the face?
He's famous. Hi.
Hey. Did he wave back to you with the middle finger and flip you off and then threw his socks at you? That's what he would have done.
You don't do that.
But, yes, the socks. My God.
Yeah, but like here's the thing with like liberals. I think they're dangerous to social movements because they're more concerned about the image of someone rather than their policies, or rather their fantasy of the image of someone. Because like
that's like a lot what
because like have you seen like some posts where like, oh, Merkel opposes the homophobic Trump despite the fact that Merkel voted against gay marriage in Germany? Yeah, the neoliberals are more concerned about who is in charge rather than what the person is actually advocating. So and that's why they're starting to claim on the left are like, oh, racists or like sexist because like surprise we don't like reactionary or conservative women or in POC in power the same way we don't like white men who are conservative or reactionary in power.
Care about the policies.
That's the thing. Like, I know specifically for American politics. I mean, of course, with this passing election, it's pretty clear that a lot of people are pretty disenfranchised with the current political system now, which I think it can be a good thing and cannot be a good thing at the same time.
They feel disenfranchised.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, like, this whole election still is just about ego. It had nothing to do with with social ramifications, or had anything to do with political ramifications. Nothing like that. It was just basically like, well, what do I like? That's basically how people take political positions here. It's like, what do I prefer?
Yeah.
I mean, again, let's not pretend that ego isn't a part of having some sort of political identity. Like, obviously I'm a communist and anarchist because I want to see the world be different. I personally want to see the betterment of humanity and an advancement in humanity from our antiquated system we have now. But nonetheless, I still understand that there's much more nuance to it, and you need to be more educated about it than just saying like, what do I like personally? What identifies with my personality and identity?
Yeah,
exactly. Because,
I mean,
it's a huge thing about the leftism. This is one of the most important things. It is being a leftist. First is being a person who's trying to realize what is wrong about the existing system and how can we change it in a way that it won't be just some sort of a different policy, sort of nicer like nicer capitalism. It's trying to figure out how can we do this stuff better, because really there are some things that should be dealt with immediately, and like communists and leftists in general should be like the first people on this. Like Syria, for example, why isn't there a legitimate pro-peace movement? Like, because nobody gives a shit about it. Like, really? No. People really think about what person is in charge, as you like really accurately said. Like, Trump really has this about like 13% of people who are going in like hard on Trump, and he will never get like below 13%.
Yeah.
In terms of approval rating. But most of the people, like normal people, working class people, are like, oh, nothing has changed. And I think some stuff will be worse now, in terms of healthcare and stuff like this. And there is an actual war happening, and USA is participating. And I'm not really sure that people realize why they are there. Normal people, not like politicians, but normal people. Like, this way, I really enjoy what IWW did in America. The way they approached the systemic oppression, the way they approached the systemic problems. They came to the people and they said it directly. Like, I remember this quote by Big Bull. It's like one of my most favorite quotes that completely, describes the leftism, and like personal, like private property stuff. He said, you work in the mines, you dig out the gold, and you smelt the gold and you sell the gold, but the profits go to the guy who owns the mine.
Yeah.
Why? This is like exactly the approach that there should be, in terms of like every single thing that is happening. Be direct. Don't let oh, we like good and the bad. We fight the bad thing. We should do the good. It's completely misleading, because it's more about getting to the people and getting them involved. I think United States has one of the biggest opportunities today to have a legitimate left, like a legitimate radical left in mainstream politics. Because there is a huge open space in terms of like nobody understands what is happening. Trump is everywhere, and people will soon try to think of like, I guess something is happening. I have no idea what is happening. And like the radical left should act fast, because Bernie claimed he's a socialist. And now people, when they hear socialism, think social democracy, and it's bad.
Yeah,
exactly.
So
they kind of muddle it.
I think the America, like, it's sort of my thing. I really believe in America. I have this American exceptionalism in my head, but not in a traditional sense. America the best, America yay. But sort of like, America, you are the beacon of light in this world. You were the guys who said, fuck religious oppression. We should just let people do their thing in our land. Come, like, let's build a country that you will enjoy. And people bought this idea, and everybody came, and everybody started doing this stuff. I really believe that America should be the first legitimate, huge socialist state that will like lead forward the revolution all over the world.
Yeah,
but like, really,
I would love,
people are looking at you.
Happen. I love for that to happen.
Yeah, but like, really think about it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like but like, I mean, I hear, I've a lot of people I know, like, especially within the anarchist movement, are also like down with that as well. But of course, it's also very discouraging at the same time, because it's such a big thing to try, and especially with like the current political climate, it would seem that maybe most Americans might be apathetic to that idea. However, well, I mean, like, I'm just one person. I'm just trying to educate people, because I think that's what's most important right now. I'm not gonna go over to Rojava and fight, because like I'm just too scared. Plainly, I'm afraid of death. But I am completely fine with educating people, trying to create art as well as news and media that can attempt to maybe change, though, show people that there's a better option than what we have now.
Exactly.
And the best thing to do for everybody, like, even if you're in Canada or anywhere else, is just to do what you can locally. Try to implement socialism locally, because that's really the best you can do at that moment. because then then like other towns and places where communists and anarchists and etc. are, will eventually be inspired to do that in their towns, and eventually grow into a national movement.
Exactly.
Because that's how historically happens. Happens.
Socialism is great if it is grassroots. In like any legitimate, radical movement is great if it is grassroots.
Yeah,
I completely agree with this, and exactly, I'm afraid to go to Rojava. I'm afraid, but at the same time, I believe that to develop your idea, that every person can do what like they can do stuff locally. I think they should do stuff locally, and if you can't do stuff locally, go online and do stuff online.
Yeah.
Like
locally,
I believe that
they give it as a national level thing.
Yeah. Even like community, like direct action. Start, get your bunch of friends and start giving out food to poor people. I would do that, I would, but the problem is people got arrested in Belarus for this.
Well, like
we actually had this thing.
Too. It depends on your city and in your local laws, but you can actually get arrested for that too. I've actually known people like Tampa
thing to get arrested for.
Yeah, like
not breaking stuff, but feeding the poor.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I know like people here in Denver and in Tampa and in Orlando, like the Food Not Bombs. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
They make good food. I've had some of it.
Yeah. Well, basically, like a lot of them also got like removed by police officers. Basically like you can't be here on government property or private property and stuff like that. So in that sense, it's illegal, not because for giving out food, but because you're occupying a space you're not supposed to be on. So,
but like this is the exactly thing that is called direct action.
Mm-hmm.
You are seeing a problem in the system and you are directly trying to solve it with your own hands, and then you get a pushback from the government, and people are looking at them and saying, why are you giving like a pushback when you should actually support this thing? And it also helps the people, like literally you're feeding the people and all this stuff, around those things and around content creators like you, for example, like, and sort of as I am, but I don't claim to be like a really legitimate quality like content creator. It's like we do our stuff, but like it's not on your level 100%. Yeah, it's like I love your stuff. You were like one of the first leftist YouTubers I've seen. Like, love it, huge inspiration. But like even especially around the content that is put out online, not around the fucking memes. What about the fucking memes? But around the content and around the people that actually do stuff online, the communities may grow, and the new, sort of party, new political parties, new political movements will arise from this sort of grassroots content creation, because this is how every single, like a lot of thing now arises. And I believe this is like our task as content creators and like normal people that actually want to try to do leftist content and leftist stuff. This is our task, to engage people in the discussions, to help communities, to engage people outside the leftist sphere, and to talk and to expose people to like radical leftist ideology, because it is a discussion that is legitimately can happen. Like we have solutions to the stuff that is happening. We need to be heard.
Yeah.
And I believe this is what should be done. And I see that it is happening. Like, I see a huge growth in terms of people participating in leftist groups on Facebook and people participating in Lefty Poll. There are more and more people who are joining in.
Yeah.
I will say this though, like I am afraid that a lot of people are joining left, specifically like who are Americans that just hate Trump and might not stick around if like some sort of more moderate candidate is elected next. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Well, but they're already liberal anyway, is the thing, because like if they already have their mindset on going for another
they're
candidate,
liberals. It's that they might be curious in the left, but then leave. And the liberals that just become leftists tend to be difficult to deal with because they are still convinced that liberalism is leftism. So when they walk into the Antifa crowd,
it can depend on the personality, because like I guess you're right, that because like I think a big problem with the left today is well, first of all, there's kind of a lot of sectarianism, as well as the fact that what was the word, like the fact that there's like a lot of jargon to go through, as well as just also generally it can't seem that the left is like violent, like you say, like, oh, I support the anti-fascists, but you know, it depends like what anti-fascists you're talking about. Like the whole thing, like we talked about this like a while ago about like Berkeley and Marianopolis.
Yeah, heard that.
You know, like I don't totally support the Antifa there, considering you know it. Like I'm okay with just you know smashing shit up just to stop you know somebody like Marianopolis from speaking, but not if it's gonna affect like you know the well-being of others, as it shows in Berkeley.
Yeah, I kind of understand that you can be skeptical of American Antifa.
I think the biggest problem is like we're so focused on trying to fight, like you know, saying like, oh, we have to fight for revolution. But right now, what we need to do is change minds and learn how to persuade people instead of like, because like it's fine, you know, go out if you need to fight fascists, do it. Protect your immigrant neighbors. They might be illegal immigrants too. Go fight the IC if you have to. It does it like you know that's great. But that shouldn't be like the only thing we need to be going for. Like we can't just be all violent. We have to appeal to people's moral character and personalities and stuff like that.
I completely agree with it because left can take sort of, you know, this stance that we are more, you know, we are the guys who actually want to do good, you know, moral side, appeal to the morality. And I think you mentioned a lot of sectarianism. This is actually why you can be leftist and not, you know, be Antifa, and you can be, you know, not supporting Best Korea, and you can, you know, you can be a different kind of leftist, and you can engage other people and get exposed to the stuff that you haven't actually considered. And yeah, please.
Yeah, there is a group of like leftists so that are very sectarian in that regard. So it's a psychological thing that I believe that when you're around a group of like-minded people, you will try to desperately create differences with like the smallest sort of difference, and then you know you kind of enter abusive territory when you start shaming them, you try to isolate them. You know, like moderators of like I've seen some leftist Facebook pages or like Reddits or like you know I do mod a few I do mod a full leftist Reddit communities. I still do, but like you know I've seen like some other mods and other pages who are like have gone on power tripping adventures and or like they try to go all sectarianism. Like I've seen anarchists do this, I've seen Marxists do this, and like it gets ridiculous. And like a lot of the times they start injecting their personal issues into it. I'm like, how is this thing you're trying to promote, you know, really leftist policy? Are you sure it's just not personal taste? And then they're like, and like they try to construct social movements based on things they personally dislike and expect the world to follow suit. And it's just so annoying. And I'm like, why? It's like, I've seen it on YouTube. I've seen it on Facebook. Okay, well, maybe not YouTube because those aren't really groups, but like Facebook, Discord, Reddit, maybe even on Lefty Poll, this happened a few times. I don't know. So I think it's a major problem we have. And on Twitter, you have like these leftists that like I was just browsing the Twitter of like this really infamous leftist who like I think she was even an heiress or something. She got infamous after being in a one Zizek video or something. She tried to discredit Zizek, and I'm like, man,
the one at the left forum.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I'm like that she apparently got into a massive Twitter argument with someone else over something tiny, and like
it seems like she was sort of taking Zizek out of context a bit.
Yeah, but like I'm just saying,
I think it is a great thing, really. Like, sorry for interrupting you. Like, I get this whole thing, but it is an amazing sign, actually. If you think about it, it's a symptom of illness, which is called pluralism. Many guys, like, for example, who take offense at stuff that you wouldn't even think they would. For example, one of the podcast names that we had was called Jewish Bolshevik Coup in Australia, where we talked about Australian politics and left, like, it was a joke in the podcast that, like, people, when you hear the word socialists, they like, oh my God, we should stop the socialists who are actually funding the schools in our city. Yeah, sort of, you know, this offense to the word socialism. And I posted it in one of the leftist groups. And admin wrote me in the comments saying that, oh, you're perpetuating the Jewish Bolshevik propaganda, which is Nazi propaganda, and it's bad. Because I know it's a joke. He's like, it's not funny. And I'm like, dude, it's a joke, literally. And there are a lot of people who are completely sectarian, who just like do their own thing. There are people who trying to find their identity inside of leftist politics, who are like supporting authoritarian left because they try to find sort of the place in the world, because they don't think they see themselves in a current capitalist society. They feel isolated, and they want to see themselves as a part of something bigger than themselves. So they join like sort of authoritarian left, you know. There are people who try to find other identity and who hate their parents. There are people who hate their parents and join the like anarchists. There are those guys, but it doesn't discredit the movement. The same way, for example, the Chicago School of Economics does have a lot of neckbeard supporters. Let's be honest. There are a lot of people who enjoy like this kind of economics, but it doesn't discredit the movement. It's still dangerous. Literally, we can have another Pinochet, you know?
That's true. Yeah, you know, because like again, that's like that goes back to the whole ego thing. Is why sectarianism exists. You know, it's just like, well, what do I like? What is it from? What's in it for me? You know.
Yeah.
Because like that's the same thing within liberals and conservative groups. But like we could still talk about like liberalism and conservatism and all of that in an accurate way without having to talk about that as if it's based off of personalities or egos.
Yeah, or like place of birth or the state you live in. This is crazy. Like,
yeah, it's stupid. It's stupid.
Everyone has their own like idea of what perfect society should look like, but like we should use this as a sort of strength, because the mainstream American politics especially doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Are you the good guy or are you the bad guy?
Yeah. Well, that's why it's so important, like, to talk about like Rojava, because like like Ev mentioned, like anarchists do like to exaggerate how great it is. But to a certain extent, like we have to make it look good because like, yes, Rojava, when talking about Rojava, there's a lot of nuance to it. We gotta talk about the Syrian conflict. We gotta talk about Turkey's involvement. We gotta talk about the United States involvement. We gotta talk about the threat of imperialism. What happened after the war's over, whenever that will be. But it's important to bring up socialism, because you know, if we really do believe in it, then we have to be as supportive as we can.
Exactly. Like, I'm monitoring the chat. There was a guy who said that we traditionally should support because this is like the role of the leftists, to support the revolutions. And I think this is like a point that should be reinforced. It was Rice Williams in the chat, and he said this, like, this is exactly the thing that we should do.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just illogical not to. Because we have no idea what will happen. But did we know a thing? For example, if we lived in the times of Russian Revolution, the October Revolution, like, did anyone think that actually Lenin was a sane person? No. People were very skeptical, and Bolshevik party wasn't the biggest party and wasn't the most popular party at first.
Yeah.
Nobody believed in them, but they did. They did a revolution. People still supported them worldwide. Like, really, this is one thing that like gets forgotten by a lot of people. The international support for October Revolution by the leftists in Britain, where some people, a union, labor union, went on strike in the port so that the ships wouldn't like embark on the way to Russia, the military ships, and people like American anarchists who got in jail. I think Emma Goldman went to jail because she didn't want America to go to war against not the Axis powers.
No, Germans and Austrians and so on.
But like still there were lots of then I got it mixed up. But still, I remember that there were lots of anti-interventionism by the left in European countries, 100%. By the British, I remember this. Like, there was a lot of stuff connected to it, and this is what leftists should do. We should prevent people from invading Rojava. We should stop America from intervening to other people's wars. We should stop Russia from doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes, like, this is the primary, one of the instruments of international solidarity.
Exactly.
One of the primary principles. So yeah, this is like my point about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So you guys want to get back to Syria?
No.
Maybe. Maybe just wrap it up on Syria.
Yeah,
we can just wrap it up.
I think we spoke enough about Syria. Plus, the power's
Yeah.
probably going to go out in Lebanon in a few minutes.
Okay, well then that's good time then. All right.
All right, so I guess I'm good. So yeah, hi to all viewers from Lebanon. Junaid says hi.
Yeah. Before we go, Radio
Or
Silence, do you
Junaid.
want to say where we can find your podcast and all your other content?
Yeah, sure. You can go to our SoundCloud. It is soundcloud.com/ if I remember correctly, it is
Just give me the link. I'll put it in the
podcast.
description.
Yeah, you can put the link in the description. It's right, and there are all the links there. Our social media. I think we'll completely upload every single podcast on our YouTube channel. Also, you can find all links on SoundCloud.
All right, cool.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us, Eugene.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me as a guest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Yep,
I
it
think
was
you're like the
amazing.
second guest we've had. Well, not the second, like in our live stuff. But I don't know, third or fourth, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for the opportunity to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm looking
Yeah, it was
forward
awesome
to
having
more
you.
videos
Great.
with you in the future as well.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
All right.